Sharpen your knives, for we have a fascinating feast of flops to dine on today. Welcome back to the box office revival. This is your box office update for the weekend. This is Monday, June 19th. Normally I would be talking about the actual box office on this date, but apparently it is a holiday, and, Hollywood, for the most part, is taking the day off, so we don't have the actual numbers just yet, but we do have updated estimates, and, you gotta give Disney credit. They went to work today. Disney did come in with the actual numbers, and so I gotta give them credit for that, because not many other studios did. We kind of have an incomplete box office report. Gosh, I hate it when they add these holidays. I guess so. Today is supposedly this new holiday called Juneteenth, June 19th. Not a fan of holidays in general. I think if you're going to add a holiday, you got to remove a holiday, right? I mean, who needs Labor Day? Really, seriously, what is that even celebrating? I mean, why is that a holiday? So if you want to add Juneteenth, fine, then let's take Labor Day away, all right? And why do we have both Memorial Day and Veterans Day? With all due respect. Anyway, I'm just I'm just kidding around a little bit here. But, honestly, on holidays are kind of annoying, especially for us who like to work every day of the week. Anyway, that's what we love to do. So don't force us to take a day off when we want to work. Anyway, I'm kidding around. Anyway, we're talking about the box office today and the movies here. We've got some historic weekend of flops. I mean, I know it sounds kind of negative to dwell on the disappointment, dwell on the failure, I guess the schadenfreude of it all. But, we want to do it with the spirit of fun and good spirits. Well, what can we learn from these flops? What can studios take away from this? That's what we're here for. I mean, it's fascinating to talk about flops, and it's fascinating to talk about blockbusters, to get down to the why. Why is this happening? And that's what we intend to do, as we always do. We try to take a deep dive into the box office, your deepest dive into the box office on planet Earth here. We're not just going through the numbers here. We are telling you what is really happening, what is going on, speaking truth to power, and on and on and on. But without further ado, I'm just going to, first of all, share the room, and I invite you all to share the room as well. We are live and talking movies. You know the drill on Clubhouse. You got to warm up the room just a little bit, a wee bit. Sometimes you got to warm it up a lot, actually, to be frank. Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, first step, sending off that share. Second step, pinging in a few people that I know wanted to be here today. So just in case they didn't get their notifications down the pipeline here, that convoluted pipeline of the interwebs. Let me see here. Who else we got? Just invite a few, not too many. I mean, it would take a long time to go through hundreds of people to ping, and quite frankly, it's probably annoying to get so many pings for me. Anyway, so I just pinged a few people, and we're letting the room percolate a little bit into the hallway. I mean, this is the hottest topic. I would assume people would want to be here right now, because as big of a success as a movie might be, I mean, it's the flops also get a lot of attention. I don't know if you've been looking at your YouTube feed. I mean, people are coming out of the woodworks to talk about these flops, and it's like everybody's getting a lot of viewership on YouTube just talking about both of these flops at the box office. And you know which ones I'm talking about. The ones in the headline, the flash flops, Elemental flames out. Whew. And is it surprising? It's not surprising, but we'll get into that as well. So first of all, I'm going to plow through the at least the updated estimates / actuals only from Disney, and then we'll proceed from there. So without further ado, here are your tops of the box for the weekend ending June 18th, 2023, debuting at number 1, The Flash, with an estimated 55.7 million, but actually I forgot, gotta subtract those previews. So it's really 46 million actually for the weekend proper, because 9.7 of that is previews. money made prior to the weekend, so thereby it cannot count on a weekend chart. So, haha, naughty, naughty. Anyway, this is out of sorts here because we don't have the actuals. So let me rewind. Like I'll try to pull a flash here and try to get back into that chrono bubble or whatever. If I could only do that. Anyway, at any rate, so let me start over. Here's your tops of the box for the weekend ending June 18th, and debuting at number 1 is The Flash, with an estimated $46 million. Its total is $55.7 million through Sunday. And debuting at number 2 is Elemental. It did $29.6 million through the weekend, but that includes previews. You got me again. All right, well, I think it did about 2.4, so it's really around 27 million for the weekend. All right, and we'll get into just how low these numbers are historically. I know that sounds like a lot of money, and for a lot of movies, these would be great numbers, but these are not great numbers for these particular movies. All right, holding it firm at number 3 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, doing an estimated $27.3 million. Spidey was down 51%, and its total is nearly $280 million through its third weekend. That's a great number, man. Plunging to 4th place is Transformers Rise of the Beasts, doing an estimated $20.7 million. Wow. Whew, that is quite the dive there. But it did, I guess if it's consolation, it did cross the $100 million mark, and it's doing relatively better than The Flash. Anyway, and rounding out the top 5, The Little Mermaid, down 52% to just over $11 million, for a grand total of $253 million through its 4th weekend. And debuting just outside of the top 5, we've got The Blackening at number 6, with an estimated $6 million for that horror comedy. And some other notable numbers. I mean, people like them Guardians, right? Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, number 7, did $5.3 million. Was down only 27% in the face of The Flash. Guardians holds strong and has a total of $344.6 million through its 7th weekend. And at number 8, some counter-programming from The Boogeyman. I guess doing meh numbers, but it did $3.6 million this weekend. It was down 49%. Totals $32.6 million through its 3rd weekend. And debuting in limited release was Wes Anderson's Asteroid City, with an estimated $840,000 at 6 locations in the home of Wes Anderson, which is based the heart of Wes Anderson fans, which is LA and New York. So therefore, it averaged about $140,000 per site. A lot of people are going off about, oh, this is a great per theater average. Well, of course you can have a great per theater average when you got a Wes Anderson movie playing at 6 theaters in LA and New York. Doesn't mean anything for the long term of this picture. But the truth will be when this picture goes nationwide, which I think it's this Friday. It's going nationwide. So anyway, but just a note, Asteroid City is out there, and yeah, it's doing what it better be doing at 6 locations at its debut for a star-studded Wes Anderson affair. But again, the nationwide release this next weekend will tell the tale of Asteroid City. Does it have any broader commercial appeal? So anyway, that's where we're at with the box office. Like I said, it's limited numbers here. People taking the day off. Yeah, I don't like that. Anyway, I know that's a hot take about holidays. Just not a fan. Not a fan. And at any rate, but I am a fan of Julie. I want to welcome Julie to the stage. How you doing, Julie? We're talking box office here. How's it going? We are going to feast on these flops.
Yes, I'm happy to know that I'm ahead of holidays on your list. I don't it's not a holiday in Canada. Anyways, good to see you all. Hey Sid, hey Andrew. Happy to be here. I've seen 3 films since the last we all talked. I have seen Elemental, finally saw Fast X, and I've also seen Transformers. 2 out of the 3 were really good. One was not. You can guess which one
Yeah,
was
I was
not.
just gonna say, should I guess which one?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'm really excited to go through the numbers. My brother did see The Flash, and I'm happy to share his thoughts as well, which is really interesting. But yeah, I'm really interested to talk about this lackluster weekend in terms of box office numbers.
Absolutely. Exciting weekend. Oh, man. I also want to welcome Sid to the stage. Sid, great to see you again here. You ready to feast on some flops? Dance on some graves? I kid, but how's it going, Sid?
But going good, Brandon. Going good. Although I'm out bit grocery shopping, so I'll be in and out a bit. But I'm around. And yeah, I mean that's a sad news. With the kind of, I mean, the numbers that it did. But yeah, I'd like to get more accurate kind of gross what it's done. But it does show what the brand has led to after all these years, and hopefully going forward things might improve.
All right, good to hear. Also, welcome Andrew, Wayne, Andrew. Welcome back here as well. We're about to talk Flash and etc. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm all right. Um, I still want to see Elementals, so I'm looking forward to hearing Julie's response to that. Um, wow, I read the numbers this morning about how the Flash did overall. It's crazy that it couldn't even hit the projections. I mean, not surprising though, I guess, seeing as how everyone reacted to it. And also, like I said yesterday, like it rotted in my mind over time as I think more and more about the movie. But yeah, so that was it.
All right, yeah, I know. I guess for some people, I know we'll be sensitive. I mean, I kid when I say dance on the graves here, but there were a lot of mistakes made, and perhaps we can detail some of those. Wayne, welcome to the stage as well, and good to see you again. Any opening thoughts? I don't know if you heard me read off the numbers, but what are your immediate reactions to these numbers?
I'm not surprised about how bad The Flash did, given the actual quality of the movie. I am surprised about Elementals, though, given the reviews for that. It's got good word of mouth. Everyone seems to have enjoyed it who saw it. So I'm very surprised about that number being so low.
Sorry, I was just trying to get out of some windows here. Sometimes apologize for the lag there. Trying to, but yeah, no, I hear you, Wayne. Whew, it's kind of a bummer. Anyway, I also want to welcome Adam to the stage. Adam, wow, this has got to hurt, especially if anyone was betting on the Flash in their summer movie poll.
Yeah, I wasn't. So, um, yeah, it's really rough. And I mean, like they include the Thursday previews, which was like 9.5 or something like this. So, um, what was the if you don't include the Thursday previews, what was the 3-day haul for
It's actually 46. Yeah, about an estimated 46 million is the actual.
46? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what the Marvels brings in November. But I mean, I can't mark this up to the quality of the film or the star alone. I think this is the trend of the superhero um, fatigue. I don't think there's any way getting around it. The idea that Michael Keaton in 2023 would be able to generate Tom Cruise numbers or anywhere close to it, I think was ridiculous. Like, the ongoing joke, this is the guy who started Multiplicity. Like, when was he ever really everything? And it's Elemental, yeah, underperformed as well. I didn't expect. I think I predicted something like 35 million. That was my expectation back in April. So it's definitely. And I think this also shows like there's probably a bit of just fatigue in general. Like, I think competition hurts, and and I think there's probably, June is it was such a dense month of competition. Spider-Man, and people are just, they're tapped out a little bit. I think at this point, they're going to recharge their batteries and maybe dabble in Indiana Jones, probably Mission Impossible, and um,
Yeah, they have to
it's
wait a bit for those, so they give them a chance to gives them a breather before those start.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's not promising for the, like nothing. I don't see anything getting 400 million this summer.
Yikes. Well, you know what? What I say to that is the cure for competition is just to make every movie a banger. So when not every movie is a banger, then you might have some qualms with competition, and very few of these movies are bangers. I guess our last banger was actually Spider Verse, it seems. But Germanico, welcome back, Germanico. We're about to dissect the corpse of the Flash and Elemental, but you got your knives ready, your scalpel. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, again, I mean, I think as what Adam was kind of saying is kind of true. I saw The Flash, and I mean, I liked it. I thought it was a great movie. I mean, I might be one of the very few that thought it was, but it is what it is. I thought it was a great movie. I think what hurt it so much. I believe what hurt it so much is the fact that it was already announced that this was going to be the resetting of everything, and I think maybe people just didn't want to go ahead and just take their chances in watching something that's not going to be the longevity of the DC universe. And it's like, oh, if they're going to reset it anyways, I won't even watch it, right? And of course, with Michael Keaton in there, which for me, he kind of stole the show, but it was a better movie than I anticipated. It was overhyped. I will say that. I think hearing quotes from directors and stuff saying this is probably one of the best superhero movies ever. I think they overhyped a lot, but um, I think it was still a great movie. Just just to come in and watch it, I still left it confused, but I was surprised to see the number, the box office number, because I mean, even in my theater, there's a lot of people there, and it was sold out, and several other times I couldn't go. So I mean, I don't know, it was surprising, but I will say this though, I think more and more that we're seeing a lot more of these movies coming straight to video on demand and yada 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 really fast, especially the WB movies. Somebody could go, oh, you know what, I'll just catch it in July, in the middle of July, because I think that's when it's going to be on HBO and on the streaming service Max. So I mean, I would take my bets on that before going out to the theaters and paying $20 to go see it in Dolby Cinema when I can watch it in my Dolby Vision TV in my house. So that's that one thing. And for Elemental, I heard from that one that's great word of mouth, great everything about it. I heard it was a really good like date movie type of movie, and for that to go bad again, something is weird about it. The norms of you know Top Gun numbers from last year, I think, is not going to happen this year. And if you're betting on Indiana Jones to be a banger, it's not. I firmly believe that's not going to also do well.
Not looking good. They didn't come out for Keaton. Why would they come out for Indy here? I mean, especially after they already had that nostalgia play with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull 15 years ago. Why are we doing this again? Why do these movies exist? Why did The Flash exist? Why did they make it? I mean, if we're asking these questions, you're not likely to want to see these movies. And same with Elemental. I mean, but we'll get into that. I know this can cause a lot of worry and concern about the market, the box office, the health of the movie business. But when you have such bad movies, I mean, not necessarily that they are literally bad movies, but bad movies in terms of being appealing movies. Premise wise, we don't understand why they're here, or they have bad marketing. This is going to happen because it's always been a product driven industry, even before the pandemic, even before streaming. We had lean times when the movies sucked. So it goes. So I don't know. So I'm wondering. So that's the question. One of the questions we're always monitoring. Is this just a natural ebb and flow of just bad product just stinking up the joint, or is this really something endemic, really something more problematic? But at any rate, we can discuss that further. I also want to welcome Levi to the stage. Levi, good to see you again, Mr. Spider-Verse. There, how's it going?
Hey, what's up? Yeah, I'm really enjoying this conversation. I'm not surprised if Flash flopped. I was actually predicting that, so it's really validating to get like that my predictions came true because everyone was kind of saying that this film would do like 90 million maybe, and I was like, no, this is probably gonna make like 40 million or so. So I mean, I was closer to 90 million. So yeah, it has to give me that. um But yeah, I think with Elemental, Disney kind of needs to figure out what they're doing with Disney Plus, because I think the reason why a lot of these like Disney films are flopping is because just I think everyone's just like waiting for the movies to go on Disney Plus, and I mean this is a family film, so I mean if people already didn't take their kids to see The Little Mermaid or Spider Verse yet, then I mean they probably are tapped out. So does have a point as well.
Right, and again, my counter is it doesn't help that it's Elemental. But yeah, point taken. Yeah, when you do have much more appealing family movies, and they already saw those movies, I can pass on Elemental. It's going to be on Disney Plus soon enough anyway, and that is an excuse that is being bandied about by Pixar, I believe. We'll have to maybe we can dig up a story. I thought I heard about them quoting that about the problem with Disney Plus effectively training their audience just to wait a short amount of time and then see it for effectively free on Disney Plus. And I do appreciate your initial comments there too, Levi. And so yeah, hats off if you predicted that this picture would disappoint, because it's not. It's almost like it's not like we're I was joking about Dancing on the Graves, but it's not like I'm just happy, pleased as punch that curse DC, etc., whatever. It's not that. It's almost like it's a validation of reality, that up is up, down is down, north is north. 2 plus 2 is 4. So because everything about this movie said flop, but then we had this other this other sector just screaming, it's the greatest movie ever, including Mr. Savior of Cinema himself, Tom Cruise, apparently. And so it was like, wow, the gaslighting was very intense on this one.
That's what
But
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's so weird.
no, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, no, yeah, I appreciate that. So, gosh, man, it is definitely one of the worst debuts ever for a DC movie, DC franchise movie. I mean, for a little bit of perspective, a little movie called Green Lantern, starring Ryan Reynolds, came out on this basically the same weekend in 2011, 12 years ago, and it did about over $53 million through its first Sunday. It was at $53 million, and that was considered to be a colossal disappointment, a game changer in the sense that this movie was fared so poorly that it was canceling plans that DC might have had at the time. And that was 12 years ago, and that was $53 million, not even adjusted for ticket price inflation. So it's even way more than that, way more than The Flash if you adjust for ticket price inflation. And so yeah, that is I guess a sobering thought. People were calling Green Lantern a disaster back in the day with basically the same dollar amount. So just to give you context of just how terrible this number is for The Flash, and because I don't like to jump on the bandwagon and just call a movie a failure from the jump before it's only when it's barely been in theaters. But gosh, The Flash has a cinema score of B, and Cinema Score is the firm that polls opening night moviegoers. These are the people that are probably the most excited to see your movie and probably the most forgiving of your movie. And when they are giving it a B, this kind of movie, that is the same as giving it an F. So the word of mouth is at best mixed. If I want to be generous, I'll say it's mixed word of mouth. Either way, a lot of people hate this movie. A lot of people love this movie. I'm in the middle. It's very divided, but I think that is still going to yield a massive drop off next weekend. And God, boy, howdy, wouldn't it be surprising if Jennifer Lawrence pulls out the W with no hard feelings? I mean, that would be pretty amazing and a big score. I mean, not necessarily because that movie would be super successful, because it's not going to need a big number to do it. So we are at the point that No Hard Feelings, starring Jennifer Lawrence, this raunchy R-rated comedy, has the chance to be number one, because the number one movie is going to be that low of a grosser next weekend. What do you think
I
about
mean,
that?
I mean, raise your hand if you didn't expect Jennifer Lawrence to star in a movie that looks like that. You know, she's an Oscar-winning performer, and I get, everybody has, a soft side or a funny side to them, but it just doesn't look like her type of movie. You know, when you start seeing something like that, you're expecting that from somebody else, not an Oscar-winning performer like Jennifer Lawrence. I welcome it. It looks like it's funny, but I just would not expect her to even be in a movie just like that.
I
Well,
think
I
it.
would push back on that. I mean, I don't know what we mean by Oscar winning performers doing any type of film. Um, Silver Linings Playbook is a rated R comedy. I'm not saying it's raunchy. I'm not saying they're the same films. Um, that film performed well. Both, well, I don't know if it performed well theatrically. Brendan would know that, but obviously it had critical acclaim because it was a good movie. But I think that I like that movie, for the record, but I feel like that's a film that could have got lost either way in awards season easily. So um I just don't agree with that perception of like, to me, Jennifer Lawrence is a movie star, and I know we've talked about movie stars many times before. She was in that very huge successful franchise, so as Katniss. So again, like, she gets to do any movie she wants for the rest of her life. If she wants to do a film like this, if she wants to do horror, if she wants to do more fantasy, like, more power to her. I think a film like that being number one next week um, says more about where we are than the film itself, because we don't know if that film is good or not, right? I can't tell based on the trailers. But going back to your original question, Brendan, I don't know what it says, because that's not a film that expects to be number one, right? It's counter programming. So, but for the Flash to underperformed so poorly. Elemental was always going to underperform. It's a fantastic film, but the marketing and the name of that film, like Elemental, that's not a catchy title. Like, you are asking for that film to fail. So and this is supposed to lead up to some of the biggest summer blockbusters, right? Like indie, like Mission Impossible, Barbie, and Oppenheimer. I'm not saying Oppenheimer is going to do 400 million, but these are kind of high profile films. I don't know if it's good that we're having this little lull right before we're supposed to be revving up again. Particularly since last year we were all begging for something, right? That's why Top Gun Maverick was such a headliner for the year. We were begging for, like, these type of blockbuster good films. So yeah, I don't know. I think next week is going to be an anomaly. But yeah, that film going number one. I'm, hey, good for Jennifer Lawrence then.
Yeah, I'm excited for that, and I actually like the fact that Jennifer Lawrence is making this movie, because this is under her production company, Excellent Cadaver. Last year there was a panel where she was talking about the production company she started, and how she's actually going to take more chances on movies and everything, and create different things. Like, there was that movie. And yes, it went straight to streaming, so it is cool to see that this movie's going to box office. Can't remember what it's called, but it was like she was an army veteran. But anyways, it went to Apple TV. That's the point. I'll move on from that. But yes,
Causeway, that's the movie.
thank
Excellent
you,
film.
thank you. That was the panel that I got to listen to her at too for that, and it was just cool to see her talking about that. And I'm glad that she's immediately going from, okay, cool, releasing to straight to streaming, and now she's going to focus on the releasing in theaters. And this is great to see a movie like this, because we haven't seen many movies like this released to theaters. I can't remember the last time I saw a movie that kind of makes me think of something like There's Something About Mary, or like that's immediately what I'm thinking. And she's an actress with range. The person who said the comment left, but just want to say, like, I don't think anything negative of her doing this. I just think it shows that she's like a person with range and doesn't need to be typecast to one thing. And also, again, this is her production studio, and she's or production company, whatever. It's called Excellent Cadaver, if anyone wants to Google it. And they've got a couple other projects coming up, and it's cool that they're going to be focusing on the box office. I'm glad to see other movies like this going, and especially if this one does well, it'll be cool so people can stop using this whole thing of of what's the word that everybody keeps using? Sorry, it's like become a buzzword, like with superhero movies, whatever, exhaustion or whatever. Because I don't think it's exhaustion or whatever or fatigue. It's just like fatigue with really poor with bad comic book movies. Because then you get a movie like Spider-Verse, and Spider-Verse has already passed 400 million globally, and it's at like it's approaching 300 million domestic. So like it's doing really well, especially for an animated movie, and it's already like surpassed the first movie's like box office. So I mean, all things considered, it's doing great. But anyways, yeah, moving on.
And I apologize, Brendan, if you already talked about this in your opening comments, but Guardians is still performing well overall, right? In terms of, so we also have another superhero film out there that has nothing to do with the multiverse. That was a very good film.
Yeah, yeah, and by the way, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse just surpassed The Little Mermaid at the worldwide box office. I mean, so it's both ahead domestically and internationally. So it's sitting at the total for Spider-Verse is 489, and Little Mermaid is about 465 so far. And I'm only pointing that out because I don't think anyone predict. Well, I mean, it's surprising that Spider Verse would so quickly surpass the Little Mermaid at this point, because Little Mermaid was one of the contenders for tops of the summer, and Spider Verse as well. But again, because Spider Verse also didn't seem to have the quite the international component, and to be fair, it doesn't necessarily have that full international component either. It is more of a domestic centric picture. Yeah, well, like the Little Mermaid. Little Mermaid just turned out to be far more domestically centered than we thought. Anyway, so it's an interesting summer, and we were hoping for an interesting summer, especially given all the movies that could easily succeed or fail. We had a lot of coin tosses here, and very few sure things. I mean, we were sure that Spider Verse would beat its predecessor, excel beyond Into the Spider Verse, and it certainly did that. But it's kind of gone even above and beyond on that front. Probably on its way to well over $600 million worldwide. It was never $1 billion contender. You never heard from me that it was $1 billion contender. I knew it wasn't $1 billion contender, but going from under 400 for your first movie to well over 600 for your second movie, what more could you ask for a sequel? So that is a rousing success. Hats off to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It's still number 3, and very soon it actually could start becoming ahead of The Flash. Maybe in the weekend after this, it could be doing more business than The Flash. Think about that. Isn't that amazing? I don't think anyone was thinking that for Spider-Verse, that or rather that The Flash would be so dang weak. Although, again, The Flash was always one of those, again, like we were talking about. A lot of people were gaslighted, and it's difficult to resist the hype for that movie when it had so many fatal flaws. Going working against it. And I know a lot of people talk about Ezra Miller. So why don't we just take a moment to just dissect the Flash a little bit here? So I see in the chat, Julie, you said, I think the Flash failed because there's a better superhero film in the theaters right now, Spider-Man. I think that is a factor. That makes sense. As Sid, you said, there's no superhero movie fatigue. There's multiverse fatigue. Great point, Sid, as well. And I think it's not just that Spider-Verse is a better movie than The Flash, it's that it's also kind of the same movie, at least from a normie perspective. I mean, what do you think about that, Julie?
Yeah, that's exactly the point I'm making. Like, the folks who are here, we're all into superhero films. We know these characters, like we're in it, right? But for the folks who go to the films, who go to the movie theaters like 3 to 4 times a year, they just see superhero film, right? It's just like romantic comedy, horror film, horror film. They don't see any difference. And so if you're making your decisions on like what type of film do I want to see, and you hear exceptional word of mouth about Spider-Man 2, or even Guardians of the Galaxy, but you know they've lost screens now because it's later now in the summer. um People are just going to gravitate towards that, right? They're going to ask their family and friends and stuff, and they're just going to go to the film where they hear more about it. And so, you know, like we're making a big deal about Michael Keaton and Batman. Look, some people may have never seen those films. Okay, like I'm not, you guys know I love those films, but like for the average person who's just going to the theater, like they're not seeing the nuances here, right? They're just going to go to the thing that's most popular right now. When I went to see or another way to say it is like action film, forget even superhero. So like when I went to see Transformers, I was surprised how many people were in the theater, until I saw the movie. Then I realized the movie's really good. So like people are just, for the average moviegoer, there might not have been enough for them to be like, oh, this is really special because it's Michael Keaton, and I know Ben Affleck's in there too, and you know, like that whole thing, like that just might not have been enough. So that was my point. Like if people were looking for that kind of film, they might have gone to see Transformers. They might have gone to see Spider-Man. They might have even gone to see Fast X. Well, no one's seen Fast X. I'm just joking there. But you know what I mean? Like they might have chose something else. And I think these numbers reflect the hardcore folks. And I'm going to say what I said months ago. The issue with this film is that they greenlit this film for 300 mil. And I know they had a lot of reshoots and stuff, and that's why it was 300 mil. If this had been 150 film, I think it would have been successful. So, yeah.
Yeah,
To
I,
that,
I
I
agree.
think
Although
any.
these grosses, yeah, oh no, yeah, just about to say that all those grosses don't even justify $150 million budget. But Sid, yes,
Oh, no, I was just saying that. I mean that is very much the case for any film that's a tentpole film, and no film should really be above 200, 250 million, honestly. And that's another thing that's hitting at it, being that if it's so expensive, why is it looking not that great quality wise?
right, and it's getting dinged a lot for that. I think Germanico posted a link in the chat about the CG effects, and we're hearing it from everyone, just how ugly the movie looks, how bad it looks to a lot of people's eyes, and but come on, man. If you're telling a compelling story, a story that people want to hear, that want to see, are they going to be so hung up on the special effects? From my perspective, it's got to be deeper than the special effects themselves. And before we answer that question, I just want to take a pause and ask people to, if you could share the room, ping your friends. Let's get the room hopping here. It's always a struggle on Clubhouse. You know how it goes on Clubhouse. Anyway, just would really appreciate if everyone could share the room and ping people in, because I guess that's how you get rooms going. So because whatever notifications don't work too well. So but apparently shares and pings work better. So I really appreciate that if people can share the room and to get the word out there. And also, let's see here. So yeah, I was talking about it's got to be something deeper than the problem with the visual effects, as bad as they may be. Because come on, do cheesy or chintzy visual effects really ruin the movie for you if you're invested in the story, invested in the characters? I'm just thinking people weren't invested to begin with, and I did want to maybe to answer that question, and I wanted to welcome Crypt Keeper to the stage. Long time, no time. Great to see you again, Crypt. You have any thoughts on this Flash matter we're talking about? I mean, do you think the visual effects can really ruin the movie if the movie is firing on all cylinders otherwise?
Hey, it's good to be here. Yeah, no, I saw the movie. I mean, just jumping back to Spider-Man earlier, I mean, clearly that's the winner. I mean, if we're talking superhero films, that's one of the best animated films I've ever seen. Period. And with the Flash, I think I loved it. I really did. I loved the story. I wasn't too caught up to speed on anything Ezra Miller did until after the fact. Um, but I mean, but beside that point, I thought the movie was extremely touching. I thought that there was a good reason why James Gunn decided to leave it around, and I thought it was a good reset to the DC universe. The CGI, I thought was absolutely horrendous. Thankfully, before I went and saw the movie, I did see the headlined article of Andy Muschietti saying that like it was intentional. Intentional or not, I think that looks terrible. I ended up rating it, I think, like a 3.5. Um, and all of that just went towards the story and the performances. I thought Ezra Miller was kind of overbearing towards the beginning of the movie, but the fact that it was 3 hours, just so many awesome scenes, characters like I think somebody mentioned earlier that no one really asked for, but um, it was a really touching story. Now, why it's underperforming at the box office? I mean, I'd be comfortable just to put my money on the fact that I think people give DC a lot of slack nowadays. I think DC is kind of uh, uh, went behind people's backs several times with the whole Snyder Gate and with just terrible movies that should have never been made or paid for. So I think naturally people are always going to gravitate towards Marvel versus DC.
Also, yeah, I completely agree with that. And the fact that, today we had a meeting in the office and we just in general discuss if we watch any movies on the weekend. And I did mention Flash, and then a couple of some people who haven't watched the film did say that, oh, like, why would we go to watch it if they're going to reset it? Like, there were a lot of people who did say that. And so it was kind of interesting, and I was like, no, as a film, it's a really good film, and it's worth your time. And yeah, the couple of colleagues who watched along with me did agree on that. So yeah, but then people are like, yeah, we're gonna wait out until it comes on streaming. So this mentality of, yeah, it's not worth just going and pay. I'd rather go and watch Spider-Verse, and all these factors coming in. And also, as I said yesterday, Brandon, the fact that they just did too many fan screenings. They're not gonna get repeat audiences just for the sake of people coming back to watch end credits.
Yeah. Yeah, burning out the hype there by just having all these fan screenings, oftentimes for free. Some of them, I think some of them were paid. Sometimes burning fans that waited a long time to see the picture, they don't even get to see it again. Are they even going to come back at that point? Um, yeah, that was banking a lot. I thought that was very odd, hoping that they would return just to see those final scenes. And if they did return to see the final scenes that we got, I think that would have angered them, especially for the fans that are so dedicated that they're going to camp out or even go to these fan screenings in the first place. I'm not going to spoil the end scenes for the Flash here, but they are a serious letdown, I think, especially, and all the more so if you are a fan of DC. So, yikes. Maybe that's part of why the cinema score and the other ratings are so low for this one. Not looking good. Let's see here. I also want to welcome Mark to the stage. Mark, I mean, I know it's a layup here. It's a layup here about whether visual effects ruin a movie that's working otherwise. But please, what say you?
Just multiple thoughts. And maybe, Julie, you didn't mean this or I didn't understand it. I don't think the general public gravitates naturally to a popular movie. There's an element to that statement that is true, I think. Friends start to talk about it. And I'm talking about the general populace, not fans of either DC or The Flash or the Batman or anything, that they might go because people are talking about it. A friend of theirs said, and it's the first weekend. Um, we've talked about this before. I think the general populace, goes to a movie based on its subject matter. Um, I think DC, I think the further we get away from it, Marvel was incredibly lucky, both in its timing and the choices that it made. in the early phases of their film run, of their cinema run. I think DC, it's quite obvious that, and this crack is going around. This is not just come up today by Crypt Keeper. Um, I think it's a mistake to announce to your fan base that you're revamping, resetting, and redoing. And that's what really begins in 2025 with Superman Legacy. And you've got the rest of the stuff on the buffet table to get rid of. So I think that the DC fan is already upset, already unsatisfied, already off balance. So that feeds into the other topic that came up. Well, I can wait for streaming because it's literally counting nickels and dimes. You know, how much you're going to spend, you're going to invest the time and go out. So it's an easier choice to say, I've been burned before. They're going to reboot anyway. This has been kind of up and down. I've been unhappy. I'm going to wait. It almost is that simple. And then there's another, this is pure fantasy thought on my, since the last time we talked. And as a Batman completist, I told you I'm going to buy it on Blu-ray. It's going to go onto my DC shelf, and not on the Flash page. It's going to go on the Batman shelf. And I'm thinking, I have to separate the fan base from TV Flash to people who go to the movie theaters, who people who go to the movies. And I just a purely fantasy since the last time we talked. I wondered what would have happened. What if, talk about an alternate universe, what if what we got, and we knew it was coming, let's not change any of the rules about how movies are made. We knew this was coming. But what if what we got opening Friday, previewing Thursday, was a wholly Michael Keaton Batman film? It avoided the multiverse because I think there is fatigue. It avoided too many characters and complicated plot. It acknowledged that Keaton's Batman is in his 60s. I just wonder what that film, let's assuming it was well scripted, Keaton delivers as he does. It was exciting, a fun action picture. It's the Batman. I'm just wondering what that would have done in today's box office. And maybe some of that is even a reflection of what we've been talking about pre pandemic, pandemic, and now this great run of films up and through the end of the calendar year and how the box office is doing. Um, Random thoughts. I think it was Pete Docter talking about how audiences have been trained to watch Disney films on Disney Plus. So I'll just leave it at that for now. Just random thoughts because, as you know from the last time, I've not seen The Flash. I'm going to wait, and I'm gonna buy it, put it on my Batman shelf. Um, and I guess final thought, projecting ahead to what I continue to be excited about is Barbie, is Oppenheimer, is Indiana Jones, which I think will surprise us, and Mission Impossible. I think will do. I think it will be a great, exciting action picture, and I think it'll do really boffo box office, as the kids used to say. So those are my thoughts. Good to
70
be here with
millimeter,
you guys.
baby.
What'd you say? I talked over you. What?
I said 70 millimeter, baby.
Oh man, you know it.
Oh yeah, yeah. If one's near you, yeah, that's the way to see Oppenheimer. But yeah, to your point about a Michael Keaton Batman movie, well, it wouldn't have done worse. I think that's a great point. In an alternate universe, Michael Keaton returning to Batman, first time since 1992. A clear,
Which it is, by
yeah,
the way, to interrupt you. It is the anniversary, and I know I'm jumping the gun on the show, but it is the anniversary of Batman Returns.
right,
And
31.
yeah, and there is a new call among fans: release the Batgirl, because.
Not,
But
yeah,
I'll just throw that into the room like a grenade and run.
Well, and this kind of it brings me to a point that you brought up earlier that really interested me because within my circle of friends, like the whole DC universe resetting was like a blessing from God. You know, James Gunn coming in and saving DC after like The first Suicide Squad, I was like insulted. Then I watched the second one, and and it took everything to get me into that movie theater, and I was like, "Whoa, all right, this movie is awesome." And then, James Gunn is just he did really well with Guardians Volume 3, and what I don't like is how they're starting it with Blue Beetle. I'm not even a fan of the trailer, but I'm gonna still go watch the movie. But it's interesting. I haven't met anybody who was upset at the reset. We're all actually, I mean, from my perspective, I'm cheering the reset on.
Yes, and there's some interesting things about the reset to be concerned about, though, especially with the Elseworld stuff. I'm not sure if the Flash and how people responded to having two Batman in a single movie reflects upon having two Batman in movies in the future. I think they might need to rethink
Three
that.
Batmen, and I haven't even seen it, Brandon.
Oh, oh
Three.
right, oh right, that's true. Okay, yes, no spoiler warning, but yes. Anyway, but to your point earlier, Mark, Michael Keaton's return as Batman certainly, I think, would have done better, especially if they also included a really strong villain and maybe brought back Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, and among other things that people enjoyed about those first two Batman pictures. Kind of a, I don't know if it would be the final one, but at the very least, they could see how well it does before they decide to do more. But again, there is such shambles that they thought the Flash was a good idea. Somebody in the 10 years plus of development, no one stopped and thought about whether the Flash was a good idea or not, and it was always a bad idea to do this movie, especially when you have the Flash on the friggin' CW, and then you put out a movie that doesn't look much better than a CW show in terms of the visual look of the picture. Very confusing for normies, and on top of that, whoever cast Ezra Miller as the Flash in the first place, they were out of their mind. I mean, people say Ezra Miller is out of his mind. No, I'm saying the people who cast Ezra Miller were out of their mind because he is not the Flash. He's not the guy you go to lead your franchise. But that's the problem. That Hollywood falls into these traps all the time. They get into this trendy casting because there was a period of time where suddenly they decided that Ezra Miller was a thing. He was never a thing, but he did put in some performances in small movies like We Need to Talk About Kevin and Perks of Being a Wallflower. So then for a minute, he got cast in everything, including the Fantastic Beasts franchise, which was another colossal failure overall, ultimately. So he's had his shot, but it's just that's what you have to do. You have to avoid this kind of in the moment, trendy, bandwagony decision making, because then you're going to pay the price down the line, especially when these trendy bets don't pay off. And Ezra Miller did not pay off, and whatever the opposite of paying off. I mean, he really exploded in their faces. I mean, oh man. But you know what? Again, I mean, I'm not sure if Ezra Miller is the main reason for this movie's box office failure. At least his criminal antics aren't the main reason. I think it's mostly that people have no rapport with him or the character. So even if he had a clean record, was a perfectly sane individual, showed up at the premiere dressed in a proper suit instead of whatever the hell attire and outfit he showed up at the premiere, just was a normal person in terms of what you expect a movie star to look like, and played ball in that regard. I still, even with that, I still think this movie would have disappointed. I think it's a small percentage of the box office was affected by him. I don't see evidence that if Ezra Miller was clean, or if they had a totally different actor, that suddenly this movie would be doing $100 million this weekend. I mean, I don't think so. Maybe you get to 60. I don't know, but I even that might be exaggerated. I'm just saying whatever people think about that, it's exaggerated because normies don't know Ezra Miller. That's the point. They don't know. They don't care. They're not following this tabloidy stuff. We're kind of in this bubble, whether it's YouTube, Clubhouse, TMZ, whatever. We think everybody is on this stuff. And a lot of people are, but just not the entire world of the box office. So anyway, that's kind of the my thought there. But we haven't introduced Alexander yet. Alexander here. We're taking a deep dive into the failure of the Flash. Do you have any
Oh
theories?
yeah, but yeah. Who's this Ezra Miller person you're talking about?
I know, right?
I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, actually, kind of kidding, but actually kind of not kidding. Who the hell wants to watch The Flash? I was watching the movie trailers, and I first of all I didn't even know that there was a Flash movie coming out until like maybe a month or two before it actually came out. And then I was like, why are they making a movie about the Flash? And why is this like dude in it who I don't ever want to see on camera for extended period of time? And why is Michael Keaton and like what? I'm honestly off that whole like multi universe type. I'm just over that shit. Like I understand Spider Man did it, and Spider Man. I hope to God is like the last of all this multiverse crap that we have to uh, be painstakingly put through because it's getting like old real quick, and I'm off that. So I'm not surprised that the Flash bombed. I'm surprised that it got made in the first place. And I guess to the question earlier was, have you ever, has a movie ever been bad because it had bad special effects? You know, to be honest, has a good movie ever had bad special effects? I was really trying to. I mean, I'm sure someone's gonna tell me and remind me right about now. But to be honest, off the top of my head, I can't think of a legitimately good movie that had legitimately bad special effects. And I was like, that was an amazing movie, but the special effects were awful. I actually cannot think of any off the top of my head, but I'm open to be proven wrong.
I would venture, for example, the Black Panther sequel. Sorry, I don't remember the name off the top of my head. Um, there were some sequences in there. The visual effects were not that good, but the film itself was still good. Um,
You could
I
throw in the first Black Panther as well, especially with that
I
end
Yes,
was
sequence.
good
I
point.
was
Yeah, I was gonna go ahead, Sid.
Yeah, I just mentioned the same thing. Very funny fact. I'm cooking my food along with a friend who's worked on that very specific sequence you just referred to, Brandon. And yeah, he agrees with you. The first Black Panther.
Yeah, but everything that you were saying is spot on, right? Like nobody was really. I know there's huge fans of the Flash. There's a reason why. There's a WB show that's been on. I think it's their final season right now, season 9 or 8. Sorry, I don't watch the show, so I apologize if I'm getting all this wrong. But it's a show that's been on for a long time. But no one was asking for this film, and Ezra Miller is not famous. I think this person is actually famous for either the crimes they have committed or that they were in previous DC films as a minor character. Um, DC films that were not successful, like Justice League. So, I'm just backing you up here and going back to my original points that to greenlight this film was a mistake. But as Sid and others have pointed out, like they had already announced that they were getting rid of this. Um, they were going to start over, and this is basically my understanding. This is the last film, right? And now we're
No,
going to start over.
technically it's still Aquaman 2, I would say.
Okay, thank you, Sid. I totally forgot about Aquaman 2. That is correct. So, I I know because we're all waiting for that film.
Those are
Um,
all bad films.
oh yeah, no, I'm joking. I'm joking. Don't worry, I'll go to watch it just to be loyal to the theater, just like I went to see Fast X. I knew why I was going to see that film. It was not to see like amazing acting or incredible complex storylines. But yeah, like what you were saying, like for the casual moviegoer, there's nothing in this film to attract them. I agree with Mark. If you wanted to bring back Michael Keaton, I liked what they were trying to do with Batman in Justice League and Ben Affleck, like the older, that whole thing. Like I liked that whole line of storyline. And Michael Keaton could have obviously done that better with some better villains. He could have brought back Danny DeVito, bring back Michelle Pfeiffer. Like that would have made at least the numbers that we're seeing now, if not more, and cost less. But, that's like, I guess my point here is I'm not sure what we expected here. Um, considering that they already told us they were going to start over. I agree with you, Brendan. I don't think it was ever realistic that this film was going to make a lot of money.
I have a question. I've lost track. Um, when officially does the DCU reboot? Was it, is it Blue Beetle or is it Superman?
If I may explain that a little bit, I think a
Please,
lot of
please,
people
because
do have, yeah, a
yeah.
lot of people do have that issue, and it's fair. It's completely fair because it's the way James Gunn really addressed it in his announcement video, and the way this was all meant to be is Flash was supposed, when he said that Flash resets everything that's going on, is the fact that it just gives the statement that a multiverse exists, and it it allows a technique to get certain characters from different universes into one reality. But to be honest, so there's that podcast that James Gunn did where he said the true DCU as James Gunn will start begins with Superman Legacy. That's 2025. Now, the way he said, the thing about Blue Beetle is that since in his slate, Booster Gold exists, and Booster Gold and Blue Beetle kind of work hand in hand in comics. So he said that Blue Beetle is a character that I see would fit into my universe, and I think this upcoming film is more of a standalone film where it might detach itself way too much from the Snyder established universe that he can consider of continuing that movie if needed. But
And that's how I remembered it, and that's why I said earlier that it reboots with Superman Legacy. And then just casual impressions. If the general audience was indifferent to the Flash in cinemas, and I've always hated the name Blue Beetle. I mean, I've been aware that he was a comic book hero in the '40s, but and the fact that the trailers for me seem like leftovers. It feels too much like Spider-Man. It feels too much like some other ones that we've seen. I'll give it a chance, but I yeah, uh, uh, I just wanted to throw that on the table because for me, really, if and it's too late for this too. You know, you talk about effects being bad and movies costing too much, and then the expectations of the box office is low. That's not going to change. These future films that are in planning stages now, when they go into production, the budgets will be the same or higher. I can't imagine Superman Legacy, having having a nice tight $150 million budget. I just don't. And so the expectations again are going to be in the $1 billion club worldwide. The wild card there is the popularity and the interest of James Gunn and the character of Superman, which holds a lot of love all over the place and a lot of curiosity in a way that the Flash and Blue Beetle doesn't.
Yeah, they should have called it Cyan Scarab. Missed opportunity. Wouldn't you rather see the Cyan Scarab? Anyway, uh, I wonder if saying that Blue Beetle is part of the future DCU is course correction because he knows the damage that might have occurred to the Flash and these other properties by saying that they're not, or basically, effectively saying they're not part of the future DCU. So, do you guys think that that was just kind of changing that tune just in order to maybe hopefully save Blue Beetle, or again, Cyan Scarab,
Yeah,
as I prefer to call it?
yeah, they're trying to salvage Blue Beetle as much. They've even changed the release date recently. And yeah, they're I mean it's desperation mode. They're just trying to squeeze out whatever they can. I don't know why resetting the universe. Hell, God hasn't even done that yet. I don't know. This is a
Well, there was Noah and the
bizarre.
flood. God's tried, but Lord knows he
Yeah,
tried. Did I just say that?
it's just a weird like. It seems like the death throes and desperation, as if like somehow this is going to move the dial, and I just and I don't think it is unique to the Flash here. Like, I mean, when we look at um the summer performance here. The insiders were saying, the moguls were saying 4 billion is back to normal for domestic box office. I don't think I don't think summer 2023 is going to make as much as summer 2022. I think the box office is going to be lower this summer than it was last summer. And
Whoa.
Well, that
yeah,
wouldn't that be a fair? Sorry, Brendan and Adam. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just gonna say, Adam, that would be true because we had Maverick, right? I know Maverick didn't come out in the summer, but like Maverick was just, it just blew everything away. And I'm gonna say it again, Super Mario Brothers to me is Maverick of this year. So I just don't think, you know what I mean? Like I think that adds up.
I also wanted to just add about the Blue Beetle topic is that a lot of people forget the fact that it was supposed to be a direct to streaming film, just like Evil Dead Rise. It was made and meant to be released on HBO Max at the time. And when Warner Brothers Discovery took over, they were like, no, the films that are films, we aren't making it for streaming because um, there is no return on investment. So that's one of the that's one of the reasons that there are certain films that they saw and decided that yeah, this needs to be released theatrical. And what a great decision because it paid off so well in terms of earning so much on Evil Dead Rise. So and then they also canceled films like Batgirl, which technically did not screen well. So I'm pretty sure they know that that movie is good as well, and given that it was made for streaming, I'm pretty sure it might not have as huge investment as a Flash.
And Sid, when you reminded me of the James Gunn podcast, what Gunn is doing is he is speaking to fans. So knowing his responsibility to the studio, if the studio is deciding to release these films, starting now with The Flash and Blue Beetle, Aquaman 2, he's trying to find a way to speak to the fans in a way that these films, even though I'm telling you that we'll be going in a new direction and quote unquote resetting with Superman Legacy, these films can fit, could fit, will work. Unlike a studio head who, when he speaks, he's speaking to Wall Street. This is two very different things, I think. So that was what created, because it really does begin with the slate of films that he's putting into motion in pre-production, starting with his Superman thing.
it seems like he, what is he, like Steve Jobs now? Like I don't understand this. It's just it's so such a like a it's like a product uh being promoted and like talking, thinking of talking about these things as like properties, and like
Well,
quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, and it's just like I think about Tim Burton making the original Batman. He didn't have a press conference. You know what I mean? To be like, hey, check it out, I'm gonna make this movie and stuff like that. Like he was busy making the film. The studio did a little promotion thing, kind of an announcement of the who's going to be in it and who's directing it. And he got busy with, and it wasn't part of some sort of massive story arc, multi film extravaganza. It was focus on the film, make a good quality film, and let the cards. Not, and I just it seems like a runaway train. It's so convoluted, and it's almost like missing the point completely. That these are just make a good film and let
it
it
is
stand on its own.
it is, Adam. It's remarkable. There's a parallel here. You're absolutely right. I mean, Burton had a completely other world of shit to worry about. It was his biggest film. It was unwieldy. It was problematic. The general public didn't like Michael Keaton. Something had to be proved there. He had to prove something to himself. The script went through massive changes that I think were for the better, including the elimination of Robin. Too much plot and story. And lo and behold, it was a success. It worked. And I think the film is still highly entertaining to this day. Now, thank you, Marvel. And we've acknowledged this. This has not come up again, but DC, in emulating The Marvel universe rushed it, broke it, ran into ditches, got the car stolen for a weekend. When it came back, it wasn't running. It had so many problems in putting their DCU together, and yet that's what they're continuing to do. The parallel for me is, and I hadn't really thought about this. I was growing up. I was a casual comic book guy, and I love the '80s explosion of independent books and new titles and new artists and really offbeat stuff. And that's when I started heavily collecting because of artists. But I remember in the '70s, comic books that were DC or Marvel, I began to search out not just because of artists, not just because of Joe Kubrick or the artists that really thrilled me. It was the single standalone stories, regardless of the character, that I liked. But all of those titles that were crossovers, literal multiverse stuff, I had no interest in, even as a kid in the '70s. They just did not. And Brave and the Bold is one of those titles, interestingly enough, that, where their stars in their franchises, in their monthly periodicals, they had to pump them out and they were on newsstands. I just made this observation. It was, to me, more interesting the characters that I liked in standalone stories, and I really avoided all of these crossover things, which have been in the comic books since the '60s when they started doing that, and the proliferation of that kind of storytelling throughout the '70s, and reboots, by the way, before you got to Frank Miller in the early '80s with The Dark Knight and things like that. So it's the movies are doing that now, and so that's why we're hearing that. So you're right. It's uh, it's a multiverse of madness, for Christ's sake.
They need to stop making movies for fans. Fans are not going to save the movie ever, ever, ever. As a matter of fact, they should say, fuck the fans, because fans are not the ones who are going to put their asses in all of those seats. There's only so many fans, and fans are gonna hate you no matter what you do. They're gonna hate you if you did a good job, and they're gonna hate you if you did a bad job. They're gonna find some thing somewhere somehow to say you ruined their childhood. Disney, Disney, and all of Hollywood needs to just go back, follow the script that Nolan did, follow the script a little bit that even uh, whatever his face did with the first Guardians of the Galaxy, done, and just say fuck him, and just make a good movie, man. Stop worrying about trying to do all this fanfare and all this BS. It's just it weighs it all down. Nobody really cares. Make a good movie, shit.
I mean, I come from. I mean, I think that I'm so tired of DC. I think he's just playing up on the reset. I agree. I mean, I think that it's a huge risk for him. I think if he comes out the gates in these movies, we're just like how DC has typically been for the last 10 years. Yeah, it's going to be a nightmare. But I think he might be playing up on the fact of like, hey guys, I know DC has been falling short to Marvel exponentially over the last however many years, so we're going to reset this thing. And he might just be playing up on that. But, um, ultimately, I'm excited to see what he does with it. I like what he brings to stories. But then again, we haven't seen too much from him to be able to know if he's going to be able to handle it. I mean, Guardians Volume 3 was an awesome movie, but it still had its faults to it. So, he's not like an all-star yet by any means.
But DC has the best films, though. The Dark Knight and Joker are standalone fine pieces of cinema. That's how you win. That's how you do it. And it makes a fortune. Look at Joker. Joker made an absolute killing. DC product or whatever you want to call it. But it's a film. Don't try to be like the Marvel films suck too, right? I mean, they're just garbage. Make DC should just pride itself on being the vehicle that gives you superhero films, the likes of which you don't see anywhere else. Joker, Dark Knight. These are That's how you do it. You just make good cinema.
That's where DC's
Fuck the
charm,
fans.
I
That's what I'm
believe,
saying.
lies, is directly in that. But I think outside of Joker, and even I was a fan of Robert Pattinson's Batman. I think outside of those two individual movies, I haven't seen anything good from him. I didn't like anything in the Snyderverse, but yeah, I mean, Dark Knight is goated.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we're in an age where IP is king. And I'm not saying, obviously, you know, Michael Keaton's Batman long precedes all of what's happening now, which are still good films. Um, and I say that specifically as good films, right? But exactly the points you guys are making. I think DC just got caught trying to replicate what Marvel was doing. And in fairness, Marvel made a lot of money with some mid films. Okay, let's just be honest. And Brendan, I know you know the numbers better than all of us. Yes, some of those films failed miserably, but some of them performed very well. I personally liked Captain Marvel, but look, if Captain Marvel never existed, that would be fine too, right? Like there's just so I understand what they're trying to chase, and I think reality is starting to set in. Like Brendan said, reality is setting in now. A film like this was never going to be the hottest movie of the summer. Um, it just wasn't, and so them getting back to great films, making great films, I would like that. The casual moviegoer is not going to keep up with what James Gunn is saying and doing. That's not for the casual moviegoer. That's for DC fans, comic book fans, like my mom, who I talk about here about all the time, because like we were just watching what is it called, on Golden Pond a couple of days ago. She's so much more of a cinephile than I realized. But she doesn't care about any of this. She just cares about good films. And there's so many people who are like that. And so until they do that, this is just going to keep happening. When I saw the numbers, I actually thought of Black Adam, um, because Black Adam was another high profile fail with an actor that had way more profile than the person who's leading the Flash right now. And no offense to Michael Keaton, who I think was catapulted to co-star of this film. But Dwayne Johnson has a pretty good track record. And we've already talked about this before. We don't have to do it again. But yeah, I just think we need to get back to making great films, which is why I want people to go see Elemental. It is an actual good film, just very, very, very bad marketing and a terrible title. But yeah, I actually think, if I can grab my brother and he can talk about it. He said he didn't enjoy this film, which was a shocker to me, because he's actually like watched the Flash TV show religiously. He loves the Flash, like the character, and he said this film was not good. So I think that the numbers just reflect that it's not a good film. I have personally not seen the film, but just my read on the market is that people just didn't like this film. And like you guys are saying, they should just get back to making good films that have good characters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Or they just don't care. I mean, indifference is the death knell at the box office, and I'm glad you brought up Black Adam, just to further drive home the failure of the Flash. Black Adam had 67 million through its first Sunday, basically its first 4 days or so. The Flash is sitting at just over 55. So Black Adam, considered to be a bust, still did more than about $12 million more than the Flash did on its opening weekend. And so that L for The Rock, man, it's not such an L at this point. I mean, considering Black Adam is even less well known than the Flash. So maybe the Rock is a kind of a maybe he's a movie star. I don't know, but I mean, we always kid the Rock, but at but that is just stunning. The failure here to be behind Black Adam, kind of the movie that inspired a lot of this shakeup here. That was meant to shake things up, didn't do enough business, and so now everybody else now James Gunn comes in and they're shaking things up even more. And totally erasing whatever they were doing there, and so much so that I hear that they may have omitted Henry Cavill from cuts of the Flash. I mean, Man, if the Flash was supposed to be the grand finale to the DCEU or whatever they call it, they should have put out all the stops. They should have had Henry Cavill. They should have had found a way to get Catwoman. If you're going to do the full, you know, Burton Batman thing, you got to bring it all in, man. Anyway, but better yet, as Mark said, they should have just done a Michael Keaton Batman movie. And I think Marco's in the comments, he said the storyline, they're like maybe a comic book storyline they could have done, the Dark Knight Returns or something like that. I don't know the comics, but I'm sure there is some comic story that's popular that could have told the tale of an elderly Batman. And yeah, you got Michael Keaton there to begin with, and let's just go for it. And you know, it's interesting. And I just want to also just make sure we're covering everybody in the chat here because I only scratched the surface here to see if there were any other questions. I see we have. Let's see here. I think we had a question from Colin, who I'm not sure if he's here. He's around. I'll ping him real quick, just in case, because we're about to answer his question. Colin was asking, how do studios anticipate how much a movie is expected to make even before it opens? So I think there's a variety of stages here, but the one that we are most aware of that's made most public is the results of research firms such as NRG and whatnot, which do a lot of polling in advance of the movie's release, and that's where they're getting these most of these industry estimates or expectations, and they're also basing it on early ticket sales. They're trying to extrapolate from that. You know, when these movies suddenly, when the tickets go on sale like a month before, they're tracking that and trying to figure out what that means for the box office. But it's mostly that. That's what they're referring to. All these polling results, which aren't always accurate. Sometimes they're accurate, but they their main goal though is to see if what they're doing in their marketing campaign is working or not. So they'll make changes based on that tracking or polling information that they have to maximize their box office. So that's how they know. And of course, earlier stages of development, I'm sure they have algorithms and whatnot, and that and probably Chat GPT or whatever, something going through all the history of movies and box office and trying to formalize what a given script might do at the box office. There's a lot of that going around. So, but if you're just referring to once they have the finished product, yeah, that's basically what they're going by and what is leaking out to the trades and whatnot. And you see people writing stories based on that. You know, X movies track. You know, Indiana Jones is tracking for $60 million debut. I mean, that's what they mean by that. Anyway, I hope that answers the question. And for I think the Flash, the studio was hoping for over 70 million. But even if they were hoping for 70 million for this weekend based on the tracking, they weren't hoping for 70 million before they spent $300 million to make this. You don't spend that kind of money on this kind of movie just to open to $70 million. So even it would be a failure even at $70 million. That's the issue there. So anyway, I hope that answers that question. And yeah, so I didn't want to derail the rest of it. There's so much to unpack with this movie. And I know something that's been brought up. You know, we talk about the troubled actors and Ezra Miller and whatnot. Well, what about Robert Downey Jr. before Iron Man? I mean, the poster boy for troubled actors, especially at the time. Well, the difference is that even though Robert Downey Jr. wasn't a box office draw, he still had an established rapport with audiences because he had been in a lot of movies since dating back to the 80s that were on repeat viewing on cable and whatnot. I mean, if you didn't see a movie he starred in, you probably saw, say, Back to School, or you saw a number of movies that he was in. So there was like an awareness of him, what I like to call a rapport with audiences. Ezra Miller has no rapport with audiences. There's no foundation to work from in order to level him up at the moment here. And so that would be the difference on that front for anyone who is like trying to make that comparison. And also, I don't think Downey Jr. had ongoing criminal issues as well. I mean, and was available to promote Iron Man. Although I do think the trades and the media are kind of trying to gaslight us again about how the lack of media appearances is what did this movie in. That's just an excuse, as Julie and Sid, Mark, everyone on the stage have been talking about. It is the premise of this movie. This is a movie that should not have existed. I mean, I guess it's fitting for a movie that is dealing with changing what exists and what doesn't exist.
Yeah, but why did it have to come in into our multiverse? I'm sorry, I just blurted that.
Well, but I
I
think it's
apologize.
also I think it's beyond the Flash. I mean, Elemental is a case in point here, underperforming, and it's saturation in June here. Better options on tap, and some fatigue in a an expensive exercise in an economy that is struggling. Um, these are additional factors. I think from what I can see, Brandon, I don't know what your kind of forecast is for what this movie's gonna get at the box office, but for the Flash, like I don't really see it making in excess of 150 million domestically and 250 worldwide.
Yeah, you're right. This will struggle to get to 150 domestic, and we didn't talk about the international numbers specifically, but it's estimated about $75 million from 78 markets. So this was a near global debut here. So the total was about 140 when you combine the domestic and international numbers, and it's probably going to gross less than Black Adam worldwide. Black Adam, as maligned as it was, got to nearly $400 million globally. Something that the Flash, ooh, gosh, dang. I mean, that is so bad. I'm sorry. I mean, I wish I could paint a rosier picture here, but just when the numbers are, you're staring at the numbers and it's like you're having this reaction to them. I mean, because you can have emotional reactions to numbers, and man, and not looking good. And Adam, you did have that bombshell. I just didn't want to get that lost in the shuffle here. You were contending that domestically alone, you don't think that summer 2023 can even match summer 2022. So we're talking post-pandemic summer to post-pandemic summer. You're given up on matching summer 2019. You're off to, can we even match last year? And that's depressing because there was such high hopes for this summer prior, prior prior to Guardians release.
Yeah, I think we're I think it's like 3 point, maybe 3.2 something, maybe like it's over 3, but it's not 3.5. And there might be some more surprises. I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is one to look at. I think this is the year of animation, and that I think is, if it's a great film, which it could very well be. I think that could be another big kind of outperformer. But that's the tail end of the summer. Yeah, I don't think there's anything um, talked on like coming up here. And yeah, I'm going to say something like 3.2 billion for the summer.
Yeah, I wanted
Ouch.
to.
Oh yeah, no, I just wanted to give a quick update because I was looking at the stats right now. I mean, season to date, the total gross is about the same, but there's vagaries in the the days of the week. So if one season has more weekends in there, that could prop the numbers up. So it's about the same right now. We're sitting at about 1.45 billion dollars for the summer so far, or 1.48 billion dollars for the summer so far. So kind of on par with last year, but if the rest of the slate is weak, to be fair, the end of 2020, summer 22 was rather weak as well. So if we do have some surprise bangers, we got Strays, we got other movies that I might have some potential. Maybe that'll make up the difference.
So I am
Asteroid City.
I'm heartbroken to hear that the Flash didn't perform. This is news. I didn't check. I feel sad for DC because I liked the movie and I really wanted it to do well. I didn't love it, but I liked it a lot. So what do you say, expert? Flash didn't Was a flash in the pan. Flash didn't happen.
It wasn't even a flash in the pan.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Tell
The
me.
estimate. Yeah, estimated around 46 for the weekend proper. It's if you include the previews and today, it's estimated around 64. But this is effectively worse than Green Lantern on the same weekend 12 years ago, and we all know how disastrous Green Lantern was perceived.
I remember Green Lantern. I remember I saw it, at a screening, and this bodes very poorly for the DCU. Was this under James Gunn?
He did not greenlight this one, so this is not his fault, but he did call it one of the greatest superhero movies he's ever seen. So I'm not sure, but he's not responsible for this movie though.
Wow. Well, like I now, did you already? Forgive me if I'm repeating things. Did everybody already talk about the bad, the stigma attached to Ezra Miller and his crime spree, as my kid described it?
We touched upon it. I mean, from my perspective, I think has an exaggerated impact on the Flash's performance. It's more that people don't know him or have a rapport with him, and he just doesn't look right as the Flash. I think it's more that than his criminal record. But what say you, Norm?
Okay, the Ezra Miller and the Flash were my favorite superheroes in the Justice League. Okay, of the of the characters in the Justice League, excluding all of the Christopher Nolan Batman, leaving that out. I really like this story. I love the. Is there a spoiler alert, or should I not talk about it here? Did everybody here see the film so I can talk about it freely?
Oh, sorry, we are spoiler free right now. Is there a
Okay,
way to talk without spoiling?
let's just say I like the surprises in the revelation. I love the Flash's I love the depiction of the Flash's superpower, his Flash vision. That's one of my favorite superhero powers ever, as depicted on the screen. My son made a criticism that he didn't use the power enough, shall we say, keeping it very vague. Um, we also, I don't know, did people also see Spider Verse? Because I saw Spider Verse and the Flash Saturday night and Sunday, like back to back. And again, without giving away too much, I observed to my son and first wife that they're the same movie. Those who have seen both can understand perhaps what I'm getting at. It's a bit humorous, actually. So I have a little bit of, let's just say, a little bit of ambivalence about the multiverse of the Flash. But I really wanted to like it. I liked all of the I like the vulnerability and reality of the character. I think something that makes a superhero really appealing is their vulnerability. I love that in the Flash. I liked his autism, if such a thing could actually be said. I like the fact that he's supposed. I mean, in real life, I think he's Jewish. I like that. So I'm a little bit sad that it didn't perform at all. Especially, I mean, James Gunn had some credibility coming out of Guardians of the Galaxy, and I believe he was responsible for Suicide Squad as well, right? The
Right.
second
Yeah.
one.
Yes.
I love that film. I love that film so much. I was one of the few who did, and I think I may be one of the few who even saw it because, as we may have discussed, it was completely overwhelmed by Free Guy, which was also a really good film. But I watched Suicide Squad again on an airplane recently, and it really holds up. It's wonderful. So I am sad for the DCU that somehow they can't get it together.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's such a damaged brand. This summer. So I will disagree with Adam on this front. I think what we're seeing is an epidemic of damaged brands trying to pretend that they are in their imperial phases still, that they're still at peak performance. I mean, we have Fast X, we see what happened there. We have the Disney live action reimagining with Little Mermaid. We see what happened there. And then, of course, we have Transformers. Now we have The Flash and we have Elemental. All of these are damaged brands. The only winning brand, the one that was either maintaining audience, if you just think about Spider-Man as a whole, but also building on it, would be Across the Spider-Verse. And lo and behold, that is the one that has performed beyond expectations. The only true success of the summer so far. Guardians 3, a bit of a slow starter, not an unmitigated success because it's still selling far fewer tickets than its predecessors. So that's coming from a damaged brand as well, Marvel, and then also it's Guardians 3 after this interminable wait since the Guardians 2, just the ridiculous wait times of these Marvel movies. That's part of the problem. But so what I'm saying, what I'm taking away from the summer so far, and what is reassuring to me is that again, up is up, down is down, 2 plus 2 is 4, because it all makes sense if you just look at how damaged these brands are, and when you are rely if your whole slate is reliant on franchises, this is what's going to happen. And also just this is why we need more and more original movies, more and more swings at the bat here. And don't tell me Elemental's original, because again, it is about Pixar, it is about Disney with that one, and it actually, based on the trailers, to many people, it looks like a parody of a Pixar movie, or the kind of Pixar movie you would get if ChatGPT spit it out for you. Now, I'm not saying that the movie is bad itself. I'm just saying how it looks, what kind of message it's sending at this moment in time, based on the Disney and Pixar brands. And so anyway, so that would be my retort to you, Adam, and naysayers about the movie business. Of course, we'll continue to monitor it, but do you guys have any other? I mean, does what I'm saying? I mean, if you guys disagree with what I'm saying, I'm happy to hear any further thoughts on that, because I'd like to, especially
I
if I,
agree. I
yeah,
agree with you. I just want to talk about Elemental because anyone who's been here knows I've been hyping Dungeons and Dragons. Now I'm going to be hyping Elemental because it is an absolutely fantastic film. I totally agree with you, Brendan. It's Pixar just I actually, we've talked about this. Pixar's decline, really big decline, started last year with Lightyear. That was just a terrible film. There's so many things that went wrong there. Um, this film was marketed so poorly. It's even worse than how they marketed Dungeons and Dragons. And if people are not understanding what I'm talking about, please go watch it on Paramount Plus. I think Dungeons and Dragons is on one. Sorry, I don't know which one.
yes,
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 thank you. Um, Elemental is not what the previews or the trailers are telling you. I agree with Brendan. The trailers are just abysmal. It is a romantic comedy. This is a film that should have actually been released around Valentine's Day. It's an animated romantic comedy in the best way. Visually, it looks beautiful. The story is beautiful, but the marketing doesn't tell you that at all. And I really think it's a huge failure on Disney and Pixar's part. They had a good film and they didn't know how to market it. And it has a terrible title. Nobody wants to see a film called Elemental. So I think it's really, just to back up what you're saying, Brendan, I think it's really a failure on the part of of not industry, of the production companies saying, hey, it's Pixar, everyone's going to show up because it's Pixar. It's Marvel, they're going to show up because it's Marvel. It's DC, they're going to show up because it's DC. That's not what's happening. You need to have a good film, and you need to market it properly. And the reason why I'm mentioning Dungeons and Dragons is because it was a good film, in my opinion, that was marketed very poorly. Elemental is not going to perform well. It's probably going to perform worse than Lightyear, which makes me so sad because it is not Lightyear at all. It's an excellent film. But as I was watching it, I thought, why did they not release this earlier? Why are they releasing it with a film like The Flash? So now we have a weekend basically talking about losing films. It's just so many bad decisions all around, but the film itself is good. So I agree with you, Brendan. I think this is the summer where the truth comes out, right? Or you really see what you made of. Like, we really see who the winners are and who the losers are. This is why I think Barbie still has a chance to outperform. The marketing has been excellent. There's a lot of buzz about it. This is why I'm iffy on Indy because of what happened before. Um, but anyway, this is just me saying, please go see Elemental. This is the year of animation. And if they were smart, they would have rode the coattails of Spider Man and said, this is the year of animation. We're doing something different here. They didn't do that. Um, and there's lots of reasons why. And I think it looks like, I think for a lot of people, they're just going to wait to stream it on Disney Plus, which is another problem because Disney has taught people to do that. But anyway, rant over. But I just wanted to sit because I know we're talking a lot about the Flash, but Elemental was, I guess, supposed to be the counter programming or whatever for this weekend. That was not a good strategy, and I never thought this film should have come out the same weekend as the Flash. I thought they should have moved it up or down the schedule. They didn't, and this is what we get.
And it's the same weekend as Lightyear last year. So I think part of it is tradition. So this is a traditional weekend that you release a superhero movie or perhaps a Pixar movie, and they're just sticking their guns to the tradition of things when they really should be shaking things up. So I agree on that. And it is, I have to admit, it is also a shame that a lot of these movies are paying the price of past sins. I mean, for example, Transformers Rise of the Beasts. It's actually a pretty good Transformers movie. It may be like the second best Transformers movie. I mean, I'd have to rewatch them, uh, but
Can I
doesn't.
can I
Yeah,
also go off about that one too? I'm so
Please.
sorry, Brendan, for Transformers: Rise of the Beast. I saw that movie twice, and the last Transformers film I saw is the third one. I saw 10 minutes of the fourth one, and I couldn't do it. And I saw 10 minutes of um there's like the night one or whatever, that the last night. Okay, that was awful. 10 minutes as well. This is a really great film. It's very nostalgic. It's not, there's so much 90s music in there. The vibe, it's very New York. It's actually what Transformers films are supposed to be, if that makes any sense. I don't want to give away spoilers. I think that film is actually outperforming, because I know the numbers aren't great, but let's be honest, we all thought that was going to bomb even more. But it's a really good film, and I'm just upset because it's a good film. Like it's not just because it's a good Transformers film. It's just a good film. The human characters are real characters. Like there's just so many good things about it, and so I don't think that film has any chance because it's tied to Transformers. And I personally think, I didn't see all of them, like I just said, but the last films have been abysmal. Please go see that film as well. This is what I'm saying about The Flash. Like, again, the casual moviegoer, they would have heard that Transform. Like, when I saw it twice, again, people were in the theater both times that I watched it. I think, Michael, it was like half full, right? When we went to see both of them, I'm talking to my brother, when we went to see Transformers. So, like, if people are just casual moviegoers and are saying, well, I want to see action and, there's going to be like cool visual effects and explosions and stuff, they're going to choose something like Transformers over The Flash because you would have. Yeah, he's telling me like, yeah, I like Transformers better than The Flash, and he's a huge Flash fan. So that's my point. Like, we're really kind of clearing out the trash this year, and some of these franchises that are trying to reboot, I think Guardians is a great example as well. Guardians should have probably done better numbers, but Marvel has just had terrible films this year. So I really feel bad for Transformers. So please go see the film. It's not as bad as the other ones. It's nothing like the last ones. I tried to watch the last night for real and I couldn't get through it. I just couldn't get through it. It's like not, it's a total reboot of the entire franchise. Still has Optimus Prime, still has Bumblebee. You'll be happy with both, but like, go see it. Please go see it.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's more of a continuation of Bumblebee. They might have referenced the previous movie
They did.
in
They
that one.
did.
So yeah, that cool, cool. Yeah, Bumblebee set in the '80s, and this one's set in 1994. And if they do continue it, hopefully they pretend Michael Bay movies never happened. That would be nice. Just yeah, go in a different
So
direction.
Michael Bay is not involved with this?
I think as a producer of some kind, but he's not the director. It's what is it? Stephen Capel, the person who did Creed 2. Is that
Yes,
right?
that is right. The person who did Creed 2, Michael Bay is a producer. He's not the director. It's a
Okay.
completely different film than any of the
It's
other.
and you're saying it's great.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, yes, it's absolutely great.
The new Transformers is great. That's wonderful news. I'm going to go see it right away.
For a Transformers movie, I'm not going to say it's great, but,
Wait a second now. You're
but
not that kind of a guy. You're the one who wanted Top Gun to be Best Picture. Now you're going to say Transformers is just a Transformers movie? Come on.
I
no,
gotta watch
it
it. I held off watching it for very long just because it's a Transformers movie. So to hear that it was that good, like I love going to the movies anyway, so that gives me just the perfect excuse to go see
No,
it.
it trust me, it is good. It is good. I just wouldn't go so far as to say great. Maybe it's great by Transformer movie standards. Let me put it that way. I think you will enjoy it. It is worth checking out, especially with all these other things. I mean, out there. I mean, if you haven't seen, I would prioritize maybe Spider Verse or Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 if you haven't seen those yet. But definitely, a thumbs up if you're looking for that kind of movie. Transformers: Rise of the Beast really does hit the spot. So that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah, I just want to co-sign what Brendan's saying in that order. I don't know if Guardians is still in theatrical release, right? Like, please
yes.
go see that. It, I know some people are marveled out. They don't want to see another Marvel superhero film again. It's so much more than that. You don't even again, this is why I'm so angry with Marvel. Like, don't give me trash like Ant-Man 3. Just give me Guardians, right? Like, that was like a real film. Um you don't even really need to see the past films. It explains what it is in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So it's a great, I would say watch the first two because they're good films, but you don't need to see those two in order to watch it. Spider-Man is obvious, like, it's one of the best films of the year, period. One of the best animated films in years. But yeah, in terms of Transformers, like, if you're looking for that kind of like action adventure, popcorny, like, not super deep but entertaining, that's what I meant by it's a great film. Like, I had fun watching it, for what it is. Um, the other films we're talking about, I didn't have fun watching them. Like, I didn't have fun. Like, Black Adam was like not, you know what I mean? Like, those other films we're talking about. So I would put them in that order. Particularly because we have these other films coming out later that are going to take up the premium screen, sorry. So I know Sid was talking about like booking his ticket in advance for Oppenheimer and other things. Like, really try to see films in premium screens if you can. And a lot of these films are going to lose those screens if not already, because we've got big stuff coming down the line in the summer.
And just a warning, they're disguising regular XD and laser projectors as a premium large screen format. So you got to specifically look for 70 millimeter if you want to get that.
Oh yeah, that's a good word of advice. And again, that's in regards to Oppenheimer. So yeah, you really have to make sure you're getting that 70 millimeter. Make sure it
I am
explicitly saying that. Yeah.
I'm watching at 70 millimeter, not IMAX, but I'm watching it in true 70 millimeter. But of course, I'll be watching it in IMAX as well.
Cool. And one more thing about Transformers. I know it's kind of probably seems strange. Like, whoa, they're going on a long time about Transformers. It's like that's surprising. But I also think it's a pretty good family movie. So I mean, I didn't see anything that.
Absolutely, absolutely, Brandon. Absolutely.
What type?
Co-sign on family. Again, this is why I think Elemental didn't do so well. I just there's too many things right now, and if you don't market it right, because Elemental I think is a good family film too, but you'd have to market it that way. Right now, it's marketed like a 5-year-old would enjoy it, and it's actually a much more sophisticated film than that. But Transformers is a great family film. So if anyone in the audience has kids who's thinking, I don't know if it's appropriate, the violence and everything, it is. Actually, for violence and Transformers films, it's better than some of the stuff I've seen in the past in the Transformers franchise.
Better,
If
like
I
more
may,
violent or less violent?
Less, like less in terms of the senseless violence. Yeah.
Entertainingly violent enough, and also you can really see what's happening on screen in terms of two robots fighting.
if I may, just on Oppenheimer and the 70 millimeter, um, you got Arizona, Harkins, Tempe, Arizona, California. You can watch it in San Francisco, Universal City, the TCL Chinese Theater in Hollywood, Ontario, California, Irvine, California, Sacramento, and Dublin, Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Georgia, Buford, Indiana, Indianapolis. You got Detroit and Grand Rapids in Michigan. There's one location in New York at the AMC Lincoln Square 13 in IMAX. Pennsylvania, King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, Providence, Rhode Island, San Antonio, and Dallas. There's locations there, one location at each. Nashville, Tennessee, and then Calgary, Edmonton, Langley, Mississauga, Woodbridge, and Regina in Canada. And then you have uh, two in London, and one in Manchester, one in Melbourne, and one in Prague. And that's your international options to see Oppenheimer in all its glory.
Wow, so limited. You know what? You know what they really should have done? They should have just released Oppenheimer in only those theaters, and it just have Oppenheimer take up residency, and it'd be like a Broadway. You have to travel to see Oppenheimer in 70 millimeter. The only way you can see Oppenheimer. I mean, Nolan's got the juice for that, right? Come on. And then Mission Impossible could have.
Exactly. I was just gonna say, and Tom Cruise would be happy as well.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, gosh, we need more 70 millimeter presentations. Man, that's what I get from that, Adam. Uh, and by the way, I had this link. Oh yeah, Julie.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment the lack of Midwest, like Chicago. I just, I'm looking at the list right now online.
Well, you can go to Regina, Julie,
Yeah, okay, I've actually been to Regina. Nobody wants to go there.
or
Or
Calgary.
Florida. Or Calgary. Yeah, Calgary is, yeah. Well, okay, there's like two in Michigan, but I mean, Chicago's one of the five most populous cities in the US. I just don't understand. Okay, I know we've talked about this before, but um and also just really quickly in terms of Canada, there's no location. There's only one location in BC, and that's not Vancouver. I know you. I mean, Langley is a suburb of anyway, and there's none on the
Yeah.
East Coast. If you're in Halifax,
Yeah, but
oh
I mean, Canada's still out. I mean, we invented IMAX, so of course, we should get a I mean, Alberta has two options to New York City's one.
yeah, that does
I
not
So
make
love it.
sense.
technically, in Toronto, you had the Cinesphere, but it's under renovation right now. So IMAX, that's the reason 70 IMAX isn't available for me. But I'm able to watch it at Dundas, where they have like Young and Dundas Square, which has a 70 millimeter theater screen, not the IMAX one, but just a 70 screen.
Sid, I'm gonna have to go to that location then, because
Yeah, I
I
think
don't think
that's your
that's my
next
best
best
bet.
option is to see it in 70 millimeter rather than a laser IMAX. Go watch it in 70 millimeter.
But it doesn't make sense that there would be only one location in New York. That just sounds ridiculous to me,
I
considering.
think I think one location with 70 millimeter IMAX, right?
Yeah, yeah. There'll be
Yeah, so
others.
there's 70
There will
millimeters
be
all
some
over the
70
place.
millimeter screenings, but even the 70 millimeter screenings will be limited as well, like like some of the Cineramas and stuff. But there's not that many of those even. Like I remember going to watch The Master in 70 millimeter. I had to travel to down 1,000 kilometers to Seattle, and I think there was only one Cinerama in 170 millimeter screening available in Washington State, and there wasn't even one available in Vancouver. So even the 70 millimeters will be hard to come by.
Yeah, my local AMC, I think, must have wheeled one in. I've never seen them offer it. Then this movie tickets go on sale, and boom, in all its glory, it said available in 70 millimeters. So I was just like, all right, damn it, didn't get the IMAX with it, but whatever, I'll take it.
Yeah, we've talked about this in previous rooms about how we need more premium screens.
And
Um,
seats.
especially Oh, dude, that's a whole that's a whole nother conversation too. More seats, more premium screens. Like if you're trying to get people out of their house to pay the money to watch the films in the theater, which of course is what we're all about, then you have to give us a superior experience to what we get at home. And I want to see it in 70 millimeter, and I don't live in any of these places, so yeah, I'll come to Toronto, Sid. But it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just it's really frustrating because and Oppenheimer is not a small film. And we have heard about Tom Cruise complaining about this, which is, and what on the one hand I find it a little amusing, but on the other hand I get what he's saying. Right? He wants those premium screens for longer, and they're just not there. This is and internationally, like this is just such a small,
Well,
like even within the United States, it's
even
such a small.
and if you expand it to 70 millimeters, so like including the one 70 millimeter IMAX in the state of New York, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 7 70 millimeter non IMAX options in the state of New York. Village East Cinema, SVA Theater, Paris Theater, Museum of Moving Image, Film Society of Lincoln Center, Cinemas 1, 2, and 3, Alamo Draft House, downtown Brooklyn, AMC, Lincoln Square, 13 IMAX. That's it for the state of New York. There's one additional Michigan option. Illinois, you have two, one in Champaign, one in Chicago. So yeah, it's California's got a bit more, but it's still like, it's just a handful.
I had the privilege of being able to go to this year's CinemaCon, and they're what I've seen walking through the convention is much more affordable options for these large format projectors. And we sat through a couple of the panels, and tons of the directors and even tons of the distributors were stressing to theaters to start upgrading because people and our expectations for movies are getting higher and higher. And Julie, you're totally right. Like, it does take a lot outside of just the trailer of the movie to get people to leave their house.
Yeah, you got to make it an event, and then that's probably why I always recommend going to see these movies at the theaters, because it becomes an event. The movie becomes more memorable. You focus on the movie. You see things that you wouldn't if you were distracted at home. But for me, though, it is about the presentation. Number one, get that great projection, clear, crystal clear imagery, the enough light going through projector, laser projection, great sound. That is more important to me than the seats, which is also why I like shorter movies, because I don't care how good the seat is. When that movie is 2 hours, my butt's getting sore. So so I don't know. The seats thing I think is an overrated factor. I think the industry got too in the weeds about the seats, because I'm going out. It's an event. I don't want to be on a couch at the movie theater. I want to have something that is comfortable, that keeps me awake, and focused on the movie. Maybe something. If you want to redesign them, do them minimalist, like Swedish style. Good back support. That kind of thing. Not these seats that you sink in and fall asleep on. And who else? Who knows who else was falling asleep and doing God knows what on these seats prior. I guess it's a good thing they're usually leather, easy to clean off, I guess. But at any rate, anyway, that's kind of a general preference thing. But yes, they improve the seats. Just don't do the couch thing, and let's put the money in the presentation that will really differentiate what you have at the movie theater from what you have at home. And I don't know. That may be a hot take about the seats because people are going on and on about the seats, but I'm not gonna remember the venues that have the seats. The ticket price is higher as well, and I bet you a big chunk of that higher ticket price is for the seats alone. So I want to be able to have a great presentation without having to pay for the couch. Okay. At any rate, by the way, just for a reference, the link up here is about Pixar to because we were talking about Elemental when I put it up to drive home just how much of a failure Elemental is. Elemental had the lowest grossing opening in the history of Pixar. Excuse me, the lowest grossing opening in the history of Pixar. It did about 27 it did about 27.2 million for the weekend. And the previous low for Pixar was actually the first movie, Toy Story, at 29.1 million. Yes, Toy Story, the movie that started it all back in 1995, had the lowest grossing opening in dollar terms. But that's just dollar terms. Attendance wise, obviously, it would be a much different story. I mean, a huge attendance. $29 million opening was enormous in 1995. But Elemental in 2023 ticket prices could not even match Toy Story back in 1995. Just to give you that perspective as to how much of a failure Elemental's opening was. And Elemental also carried a $200 million price tag. So this is a movie that might be lucky to get to $200 million worldwide. So both of these movies, The Flash and Elemental, may go down as historic failures, especially to have two movies opening on one weekend that between them are losing hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.
Welcome to the cult club.
Yeah, I feel again. I feel I don't like it's worse than even what was that awful film Onward? It's even worse than that, right?
Yeah, that debuted to $39 million right before the pandemic hit.
Yeah. I mean, this film is so much better than those numbers, but I just had a feeling going into this film. I was like, this is going to be a situation where I love this film and Pixar just screwed this up from beginning to end. And it's true. The title's bad, the marketing was bad, the time they released this film is bad. Like this is not it's a romantic comedy, but it's animation. Like it's not really the time. Um they just had massive layoffs, did they not? Weren't we talking about this a couple weeks ago? So I don't know. Like I don't like you already laid off a lot of people. I don't know what you're gonna do again. Like I don't know whose head is gonna roll for this. I'm sure someone's head will roll for this. It does have good word of mouth. I don't think it's gonna get to 200 million domestically. I love this film. I love Elemental. It's one of my top 3 favorite now of the year. Um but so please go see it. But yeah, this is just a complete failure financially.
I was just going to pop in and add that the cinema score for Elemental was an A, so a very solid grade from cinema score versus a B for The Flash, which again, as I said, is effectively a fail. You want your movie to either get an A and ideally an A plus from your cinema score audience polling. But Elemental passed that test at least. The Flash did not.
I think the Flash largely has to do with the VFX. I think a lot of people were not happy with that creative decision.
Yeah, it's certainly getting a lot of press attention. I still believe though, if the everything else was sound with the picture, people wouldn't have that much of a problem with it. I mean, without going into spoilers, I can see how audiences would be dissatisfied with the way it ended, and it's very important for a movie to end well. I mean, you could have a kind of a bad or a mid movie, but if it has a great ending, almost all is forgiven as far as audiences are concerned. It is so important to end on a great note for a movie. You got to leave that audience. You got to have that audience leaving the theater singing, just with a great feeling or whatever feeling is intended for that picture. Whatever, if it's a horror movie, just that sheer sense of dread or scares, or but in a fun way. And for the Flash, you got to give them a lot of uplift and inspiration and fun. And your mileage may vary on whether the Flash did, but I can see where the audience is reacting this way. And yeah, yikes. But yeah, I don't know. As Crypt though, that's my thesis though. If they had the sound story, the characters people believed in, the verisimilitude, in other respects to this movie, they might have forgiven some of these dodgy effects.
Right, and by no means is the Flash a hill I'm willing to die on. I was touched by the story, though. I really did. I thought it was a wonderful story. Going into the movie, I knew there was a lot of slack on the main actor. Again, I hadn't seen him in anything, so I expected to really not like it. And it was one of those movies where I left knowing, like, okay, I think everybody was talking about how this is going to be the best superhero movie of all time. I mean, James Gunn was quoted saying that, and it's like I don't think it was the best superhero movie of all time, but I think it was one of DC's better superhero movies in a long time. Comparatively speaking to the Snyderverse, which I just wasn't a fan of, and even arguably some of the VFX in that movie wasn't that great either.
I agree with you that Snyder films didn't have great VFX. Generally, I was talking to my brother about this. Michael, do you want to talk to my group? He was saying the ending was absolutely atrocious, and that's why he didn't like it. And I don't know. We just had this conversation recently about Spider-Man and how people were reacting a certain way to the ending as well. You really need to stick the landing. You have to stick the landing. Otherwise, people are like, that wasn't that great. Special effects weren't that great. That thing that happened wasn't that great. But if the film ends on the right note, like Brendan said, you're like, oh, that was a fantastic film. Um, Transformers for what it was, it stuck the landing. So, I'm not going to be nitpicking about the special effects, or those kind of things. Whereas Spider-Man, I think that unless you know going into it that it's a part one, you don't know. And we talked about that already. So um, I think that really hurt them because he told me, he's like, Act One and Act Two were great, and then Act Three, I didn't understand it. I hated it. I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, that's the worst film I've seen out of all the films that we've seen. I'm like, oh. And I'm not gonna see the Flash. You guys already know, but my brother is like one of the biggest Flash fans I know. Like this is the film he's been waiting to see. So I just was so shocked by that. So I think if you don't stick the landing, it just hurts you overall. And I believe Brendan, I know you were talking about how because you're talking about Asteroid City, right? So I don't know if this is a thing, but I saw an article about how in some of those theaters where Asteroid City was performing well, at one point they had more people in their theaters than people were watching The Flash. And I thought that was like interesting because I thought, hey, that I would expect Flash to be sold out too in those theaters, but it wasn't.
Right. I mean, but then again, we are in the era of like the A24 artsy film, and Wes Anderson, man. I mean, I'm very happy to hear that. Like that made my heart melt. I'm happy for him if that's the case.
Interesting. Well, yeah. Again, but Asteroid City, they're kind of juicing the numbers by only playing in basically six theaters to the faithful of Wes Anderson. So of course they're going to get the big numbers. The real test is to come. And there's some interesting oddities about Asteroid City as well. I'm updating the links to fit some of the things we were talking about here. And here's a news story about the director talking about the visual effects there with Asteroid City. We'll see how that pans out too, because I haven't seen it yet myself. Because just because it's in LA doesn't mean it's easily accessible. LA, New York, it's hard to get around across town. It could be I'm not going to drive an hour to see Asteroid City, but Asteroid City has an audience score of 49% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is kind of funny. They have 50 people, but that's that's developing. As more people see Asteroid City, we'll see how the audience score all changes on that. Because if a movie that's playing to Wes Anderson fans and they're not liking it, that could be problematic for that movie in the long run. But just it's funny. Anyway, so there's that, and let's see here. What else we got going on here? So I think any further thoughts on the Flash or Elemental? I just want to make sure we've thoroughly vetted both movies here because man, these weekends like this don't come around that often.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the article that you posted before, and I've read that one about how Disney has trained people to watch animation films on Disney Plus as opposed to going to the theaters. And I think that article quotes the films Soul, Turning Red, and Luca, which are all really great films. But obviously during the pandemic, though Turning Red I think should have been in the movie theaters, but I digress. Um, yeah, I think that's really true. I think people are gonna discover Elemental on Disney Plus and realize, hey, this is actually a really great film. And I think we've talked about this in the rooms before, how Disney really is just about content, right? I mean, well, actually, that Puff piece in New York Times, that's what he said. They're pretty much just trying to build content for their streaming. Like, I don't remember the article itself per se, but basically that was the message, right? And so I think the marketing, they probably just were like, yeah, whatever. We don't really need to tell the real story of this. I know I'm describing it as a romantic comedy. There's other things that happen in this film that really give it such a it's a really full fleshed out film, and it's actually much more of an adult film. It is family film, but it's not silly, goofy, childish at all. And the marketing tells you none of that. I think because they're just going to be like, well, it doesn't matter how it performs. We've got more content for Disney Plus then, right? And I think part of that is true. And again, I think this film, it's really sad what's happening because I do think it is a year of animation. And we see that with, I mean, Spider-Man is just, that's just a good film, period, right? But it's a great animated film. And we had some great animated films last year as well. So I do think there is some truth to that, especially as a family animated film. If you train people to just wait to watch it on streaming a month or two from now, like this film is not going to be in the theaters for 2 months. We know that. So people are just going to wait, and then that just hurts the bottom line.
I wanted to throw in, you just reminded me of something that news that popped through social media. I really, really do wish I knew Guillermo del Toro to ask him about the stories that got out about in the last several days that I think the number is 15 of his films were rejected by studios, and he is devoting himself to animation um, in the time that he has left. That's the summation of what's been thrown around. You all know how I feel about the animated film, and I find that interesting. But like all news, there's not enough meat. You don't really get the nuance of what he's thinking and feeling and what that was. But yeah, it's a good time for animated films. You just imagine.
I'll try to find the tweet, but I believe he tweeted out that he's only going to focus on animation.
It's two. Yeah, it was something like two tweets, and then how the entertainment news media makes a story out of a tweet, so it waters it. You don't get any more meat, so maybe there is an interview out there beyond that at this point, but caught my attention, obviously, for so many different reasons. Because I like Del Toro as a filmmaker, live action or animated. When you know, so
I came back late, had to hop out for a minute. But for Elemental, did anyone else get the vibe this kind of looked like a movie that would go straight to streaming or straight to DVD? Whenever I saw the previews and everything, that was the vibe I was getting off of it. I still want to go see it in theaters, but just wondering if it was just me or due to like the lackluster marketing. Did anyone else get that vibe?
I
Just wondering.
I actually had no idea it was from Pixar. I just I didn't think the movie looked so good on a visual end. But it's piqued my interest now, so I definitely want to watch it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. I believe it was marketed as a film that's like straight to DVD, and then when you're watching it in the theater, you're like, "This is an amazing film." The shots like the scenes and the shots that they chose for the trailer and the marketing tells me they didn't care about this film. Those are like even visually, like because you just mentioned Crypt, like, hey, wait a minute, it doesn't even look like a Pixar film. It doesn't look visually appealing. What's in the actual movie is way more visually appealing than anything that I saw in the trailers. So I'm just so upset with Disney. They didn't care. They
yeah.
and there's a short, by the way. There's an animated short before the film that's from the characters from the movie Up. So I didn't know about this my until I
Well,
got it.
that's a horse of a completely different color. Now I might go. But you know what? You reminded me of something else you said earlier tonight, Julie. The title Elemental, not a grabber. It sounds like the title of a Pixar short, if that makes any sense. I'm sorry to cut you off and jump in, but
I
you
think it sounds like a Nolan film.
well then the trailer really was
Elemental.
miscommunicating something.
It's just like it's like some sort of like sci-fi, some sort of sci-fi. Sounds like a sci-fi movie. Elemental.
In, Interstellar, Elemental,
Momentum.
Momentum.
Hmm. Yeah, it definitely kind of looks like a kind of like reminds me of Ants. Like uh, when I look at it, I don't know, like I don't know why that just came to mind just in thinking of the terms of quality. But that's good to know, Julie, that I'll be happily surprised with the look of it. Then if it's as good as how you're saying for me. But yeah, I'm looking at like this photo and this article Brandon shared, and I'm just looking at it, and it just doesn't look appealing to me. So yeah.
Yeah, that image of them walking on the street, like there's nothing. You can't even tell that they're in a relationship. Like it's a movie about them falling in love. Like, do you even get that from that picture? It's just, ugh.
So you're saying it has a tragic ending?
LOL. No, it doesn't.
Ooh, wait a minute. Fire, water. Maybe the title could have been Steam Heat or something.
Yep, that's all what we're all thinking. How is this going to end if they're having a relationship?
I know, and they do deal with that in the most G-rated version ever, but they do actually deal with this. There's a whole other line of storytelling that's happening here outside of the relationship that I think is beautifully done. I don't want to spoil it. Um but I think it's beautifully done. But yeah, like these shots tell you nothing. Like they just look like what, two friends getting to know each other? Like I don't know. But yes, they do deal with the whole like how do fire and water have a relationship together. I'm I'm not saying it's super realistic, but they do at least deal with that.
Well, that's good. I mean, but here's the thing. This is actually important because whereas we were criticizing the Flash for its lacking in verisimilitude, I thought maybe there's an element to that in Elemental. Uh, I want to refer to a scene in the trailer. There's a scene of them just basically walking through a chain link fence, and they say, "Why do they make these?" And they're, "I don't know. I mean, it's supposed to be a joke about how you don't need, I guess, a chain link fence in this world of elementals." But doesn't that violate the verisimilitude here? I mean, why? And if that is a gag in the movie, why are you putting that in the trailer? It's almost, again, it almost is feeling like a parody of a Pixar movie when you have that kind of world breaking gag so prominent in your trailer.
Yeah, that was just so. I agree with you, Brendan. And I remember seeing the trailers thinking, I'm just going to see this movie out of faithfulness of Pixar. Um, But yeah, like that scene was, you see it and you're like, okay, that's a good point. And then actually what happens after that is an even better scene. Like the things that they choose, the jokes, and I'm putting that in air quotes, the jokes that they choose to amplify in the trailer are just, they're not funny. They're not funny. They're like the worst parts of the movie. Like where he's like, "Oh yeah, I've got two kids, Marco Polo." Like that's not funny. Like I don't even know why that's, like, we can argue about whether those scenes should even be in the movie in the first place, or those lines should be in the movie, but like why would you use that as part of the promotion when there's so many other better parts of the film? Like it's not even a jokesy funny movie in that way. I don't want you guys thinking, "Oh my goodness, I'm going to be like laughing every 5 minutes." It's not that type of movie at all. It's more of a romantic. It's like a dramedy, like that kind of dramedy romantic film. So were they just not able to figure out how to promote something or like that, or they just didn't care because they're like, well, this is more content for Disney Plus?
You got me. I don't know. And now it's time for Mark Redfield's non sequitur of the evening. Has anybody seen the trailer? I didn't even know this film was around until yesterday. There's a trailer for a horror film, I think it's July release, called Cobweb. Is anybody in the room aware of it?
Yes, I was aware about it.
I really like the trailer, and the tropes in it are familiar. Yeah, we've seen these with franchise films, but this seems like something, pun intended, dusting off the cobwebs to play with those tropes and do something new. I liked the trailer; it worked for me. So I was just curious because we had not talked about it, and I didn't wasn't on my radar till I saw the trailer last night.
Yeah, also pretty great cast like Lizzie Kaplan and Anthony Starr, who's known for playing Homelander. So yeah, I mean the star cast is pretty great, and I just randomly spotted it. I mean I'm not saying that knew about this movie from a long back. I just happened to come across the trailer the day it kind of premiered. Also, the
Yep.
trailer for Sony's Craven dropped today.
Yeah, that dropped today, and I think Cobweb is a Lionsgate release. I think.
Which, Lionsgate has recently let me down with a couple of their films, horror and just anything outside of horror.
Yeah, but Lionsgate did have The Blackening in the market, so I just wanted to also give a shout out to the third nationwide release of the weekend. So thanks, when you brought up Lionsgate, that reminded me. It did an estimated $6 million. No great shakes, but relatively speaking, I think The Blackening did better than Elemental and The Flash. So there's something to be said for that. And it was a very low budget horror comedy. And oh yeah, thanks for updating the link to Cobweb. I have Cobweb on the schedule for July 21st. So make your choice: Oppenheimer, Barbie, or Cobweb. And then the next weekend after that, you have A24's Talk to Me. So a lot of horror fare in the late summer. Talk to Me is, they're hoping to be like a sleeper success of some kind. It's a hot trailer going around, but I'd heard of Cobweb. Haven't watched the trailer yet, but there's the link if you guys want to watch it. And you're right that Craven did get its trailer debut. I haven't watched it yet either, but it's out there. So I guess we'll update that link as well if you wanted to bookmark that Craven trailer.
And a Red Band trailer, if I'm not misshapen.
Yes.
Nice. That's what we like to see. Going hard with the Craven there. Let's hope Marvel goes hard with Blade as well. That would be something. Let me find that trailer for. I had it handy somewhere. Oh, I'm in the wrong thing here.
I got you.
Oh,
I'm
great.
updating it.
Cool. Thanks, Sid. All right. One of these days, I need to put up that link to a interview of John Lasseter, uh, the former head of Pixar, part of the famous Pixar Brain Trust. He had a great. There's a great quote going around. I had it handy, but I just lost my link. I just wanted to give a shout out, but where he talks about the formula for how to make Pixar movies, and he was talking about He mentioned this whole point of verisimilitude, of making a believable world, not a world to reflect reality or be realistic, but a world that works on its own. And that's why I pointed out that clip from Elemental in the trailer where it seems to be violating its own world by having that. And I don't know, I don't think that's something John Lasseter would have let happen. And that's maybe one of the problems with Pixar losing most of their brain trust. I mean, they don't have Brad Bird anymore. Ed Catmull, who was the co-head of Pixar with John Lasseter for all those years, he's gone. I mean, all they have left is basically Pete Docter. And you know, your mileage may vary on how what you think of his movies. He wasn't my favorite of the Pixar crew, and I think we're seeing that we're seeing the effects of that here. And so I just wanted it's interesting how they've kind of lost the plot at Pixar. At least that's what it seemed like. Is it a coincidence that it also coincides with the loss of John Lasseter and everyone else, or most of the talent that really that led the way in the Imperial phase of Pixar? Anyway, just a thought. If I find the link, I'll put it up because, and I'm bringing up Pixar and to help guys understand why they probably released Elemental on this weekend. I'm going to change the link here, so last chance to bookmark that Craven thing here because now's the time for movie anniversaries. And would you believe that 5 years ago, Pixar was on top of the world?